We want to welcome everyone back to Boxing MMA Picks. We are here with our first prediction video for 2022. Back with a big one, UFC 270, Francis Ngannou taking on Ciryl Gane. Allow us to reintroduce ourselves. Of course, he goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. We are Boxing MMA Picks. And what we look to do is give you a weekly fight-by-fight breakdown and analysis specifically from a betting perspective. So we're looking at letting you know which fights are worth the value, which fights you want to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video. For 2022, one thing that we are going to make sure that we keep up with, if you noticed on our channel, on the main card video after the event towards the end of the year, we started tracking our records, our prediction record. So that is something that we are going to maintain for the entire year, of course, starting with UFC 270. And we're also going to keep a total running tally. So the way that you would find that is after the event, take a look at our main card video for the respective event, and you'll see how we did from a record perspective as well as a percentage perspective. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video and, of course, participate in the comments. We want to hear from you. But we're going to get started with our first prediction video of the year. UFC 270, as I mentioned, Francis Ngannou taking on Ciryl Gane, heavyweight championship on the line. Another title fight with Brandon Moreno taking on Davison Figueiredo, part 3. So definitely a big event to get started with our first video for 2022. We are going to start in our usual fashion with prelims. Now, one thing we tried to do is even give it an extra day to see if UFC was going to sort out the order. Doesn't seem like they've sorted out the final fight order yet. So the fight card order is subject to change. We figured the best thing that we would do, 13 fights on this card as it currently stands. So we're going to look according to Tapology at the first 7 fights, and we're going to call that the prelim video. And then we're going to take a look at the final 6 fights of the card according to Tapology, and we're going to call that our main card video. So a lot to get started with, but we are officially going to kick things underway, taking a look at fight number 1, again, according to the Tapology order. We have Jack Della Maddalena taking on Pete Rodriguez. I'm going to start breaking down this fight. Jack Della Maddalena, he's coming from Dana White Contender Series. He last fought in September, where, of course, he won his fight, hence his UFC debut. He's actually on a 10-fight winning streak. We see his record there at 10 wins, 2 losses. Lost his first 2 professional fights and has only been winning ever since. His striking looks pretty clean, decent jab from what I've seen, decent combinations from what I've seen. I've seen a decent calf kick. As well as his movement, good movement in and out, good movement laterally, good head movement as well. Some pretty solid stuff from what I've seen here with him. Has a judo background from some of the commentary that I've heard in his fights. He also used to play rugby, so he has that toughness that could potentially even speak to that toughness, that clinch ability, potentially takedown type of situations. He may just be naturally a strong guy, if we're going to sort of base it off of his background. And even in the Dana White Contender Series fight that he had, showed me, there was a moment in the fight, showed me some pretty solid scrambling IQ. Looks like he kind of knows what he's doing down there should the fight go to the ground. But he is somebody, from what I've seen, that likes to keep the fight on the feet. Don't necessarily see that it factor that they're sort of talking about with him. But admittedly, I didn't see the it factor with Paddy Pimblett either. I still don't. Jack Della Maddalena, he looks pretty solid from what I've seen. Pete Rodriguez, on the other hand, he's making his UFC debut as well. 4-0, undefeated fighter. Decent looking stand-up from what I've seen. I've seen some switch stance. All 4 of his wins are via KO TKO, so that's something to definitely notice. Pretty explosive, unsurprisingly, with that KO stat that he has. Again, straight to the prediction, I think a few things are true in this fight. I think Maddalena has the cleaner striking. I think Maddalena is maybe, dare I say, more proven. 2 guys making their UFC debut. But he's had more professional fights. He's actually been to a decision He's even been past the first round, whereas Pete Rodriguez, all of his fights have ended in the first round. So it could be a test of time in terms of as this fight goes on. I also think that Maddalena, to some degree, is being pushed by the UFC a little bit more than Rodriguez. Again, going back to the Dana White Contender Series fight, Sean Shelby, matchmaker, kind of has to say this stuff to promote his fighters, but he said Jack Della Maddalena was someone he's been scouting for a very long time. So very excited to get him in Dana White Contender Series. They push him to the UFC right away. Wouldn't be surprised if they have a little bit more backing under Jack Della Maddalena. So ultimately, Jack Della Maddalena is going to be my pick. I wouldn't necessarily include this on parlays, two newcomers, sort of anything can happen. But again, I'm going with the Australian Jack Della Maddalena.
Yeah, this is a good fight we got here. These guys are gonna both gonna want to bang here, both gonna want to strike. When I look at Pete Rodriguez, he's been knocking guys out cold. He has that touch of death. It looks like 4 fights, professional fights, 4-0, 4 knockouts in the first round. He has a 10-second knockout, 41-second knockout. And when you look at his amateur record, he's 7 wins, 2 losses, and he has 5 knockouts. No, he has 7 knockouts in all those fights. Only one of those fights went to the second round. All the other fights were first round KOs, right? So it's either he's fighting the wrong guy or 14 of these guys had no chin. But this guy's knocking people out cold. And when I look at Jack Maddalena, hard to say his name, he's clearly the better fighter here. He's gonna be the taller guy. In my opinion, I think he's actually the better striker, and I think he's also the better wrestler. And I think the wrestling, if he just takes it to the ground, he can make this an easy fight. So in this spot, I do like Jack Maddalena, but again, Pete's power, I'm not sure how that translates to the UFC level, but every human that stood before him got knocked out in the first round. One guy lasted 2 rounds. So I'm not sure if that's real, but I think Jack can take the shots. And as the fight goes on, Pete's not used to fights in second, third round. I think Jack's going to run away with the fight at that point.
Let's move on to fight number 2. Again, according to the Tapology order, because I can definitely see this one changing orders. We have Ilia Topuria taking on Charles Jourdain. Taking a look at Ilia Topuria, he beat Ryan Hall back in July. Still an undefeated fighter, 11 wins, 0 losses, good boxing, long jab, powerful overhand right, good combinations, cuts the ring off pretty well, good constant pressure. However, very, very much a wrestling and a ground specialist. Strong wrestling, he'll shoot for the takedown. He has that Greco-Roman background, really controls that top position if he does get on top of you. Good deep submission attempts as well. He like I said, he's known to have a good jiu-jitsu as well. And he's one of those fighters that kind of has the entire package and could really be a threat in this featherweight division sooner rather than later. If I'm looking at Charles Jourdain, solid fighter in his own right. He competed just over a month ago. He beat Andre Ewell via unanimous decision. He's a pretty good dynamic striker, southpaw switch stance type of fighter. Good pop, good explosiveness. We look at his record there, 12 wins. 8 of them are by KO, TKO, so he has that ability to hurt you. Pretty good counter striker, good calf kick, just a high action fighter in general. Again, he's really explosive in his own right. Only thing I'll say with Jourdain, a bit inconsistent at times. A bit of a one-trick pony in terms of his style of attack. He likes to come forward, he likes to put on the pace, he likes to put on the pressure, and he'll take one to give one. So that could be, his strength and his weakness at the same time. And I think, again, that flashiness might work against him. You look back to that Andre Ewell fight, he went for a jumping knee, he lost balance, and Ewell ended up on top. Now, he was able to get up right away. He was the bigger, physically stronger fighter in that match. But Topuria, you make that happen with Topuria, you've lost a round. Much different threat in terms of his ground game. Topuria also just being the more complete fighter is enough reason for me to pick him in this one. I think his stand-up is good, keeps up with Jourdain in a lot of way. I think the wrestling, of course, is a lot better for Topuria. And that combination typically fares well for the fighter with the better wrestling. Jourdain is dangerous. So I see minus 500. I do get a little concerned in terms of, throwing Topuria on every single bet that I make. But, I do feel really good about Topuria in this spot. So I'm going with Ilia Topuria.
Yeah, this is a good replacement fight. I'll take it. It's kind of upsetting that the Evloev fight was canceled for whatever reason it was. Topuria, Evloev would have been a good fight to see where these guys are at. But I'll take this fight. And when I look at these two fighters, ranked 14, 35 on Tapology, I think Jourdain has that speed. He has that ability. If this stays striking for a period of time, he can definitely cause some problems for Topuria. But I think Topuria's game here. I think he's game. I think he's going to take this to the mat. As you said, he's a well-rounded fighter. And I'm really high on Topuria. I actually think he could be someone to look out for this year. And I think in a fight like this, I think he's going to be able to dictate where the fight goes, whether it's striking, whether it's grappling. And I see him using his grappling in this fight. I see him getting this to the mat, getting some ground and pound, maybe a submission. But I like Topuria here to get a finisher.
Let's move on to the third fight. Again, according to Tapology, we have Vanessa Demopoulos taking on Silvana Gómez Juárez. For Demopoulos, she lost via unanimous decision to JJ Aldridge back in August. 1 win, 1 loss, and a couple of grappling matches since. She is introduced to the point of the grappling. She is introduced as a jiu-jitsu fighter as well as a Muay Thai style fighter. Aggressive, high-paced striker. She likes to come forward. She likes to engage, decent low kicks. She does leave herself open. Not the best striking defense, in my opinion, which could hurt her in this match. I'll get to that later. But her strength is in her jiu-jitsu. Pretty decent level grappler. I wouldn't say I've seen really any strong clinch game or strong takedown game from her, which could be a problem for her in this fight. But it is important to note that she's fought in 5-round fights before. Her cardio has held up decently, so we know that she should be able to keep it up for a 3-round fight. Looking at Silvana Gómez Juárez, she lost her UFC debut to Lupi Godinez back in October. Can't be too mad at that. That was a late notice fight for her. First couple of things that I noticed with her. First thing that I noticed is that she's 37 years old. Second thing that I noticed is that in the ring, she is introduced as a striker. Looks like her jab is decent. Her striking is a bit one-dimensional, in my opinion. She is essentially a boxer, can't really mix things up. And she had issues with Godinez's aggressiveness in their fight. She also had issues with the takedown defense. She had issue with just really the grappling as a whole. And we know, of course, she lost that fight. I believe it was via armbar, if I'm not mistaken. I think Juárez will face some of the same problems in this fight that she had in her debut. Of course, I don't think Vanessa Demopoulos has the wrestling ability that Godinez has, and that could ultimately cost her the fight. But I do think that she can use that same aggressive style or same pressuring style on the feet to try to create some clinching situations and potentially use those clinching situations to take the fight to the ground as opposed to showing a strong wrestling background per se. Overall, maybe not the better striker, but I do think Demopoulos could be more effective on the feet as the more diverse striker. Of course, when we think Muay Thai, we think hands and feet. Gómez Juárez is more boxing, so just hands. And I think Demopoulos will have a clear ground game should it get there. The odds are in her favor from a breakdown perspective. The odds are in her favor slightly from a betting perspective. So she's going to be my pick. I'm going with Vanessa Demopoulos.
Yeah, I'll be quick on this one here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this matchup here. I wouldn't bet on this fight. That's the first thing I'll say. When I look at Vanessa Demopoulos, I'll echo you. Her takedowns. For a jiu-jitsu fighter, she needs to get this to the mat. And if she can't get it to the mat, she's gonna have a hard time implementing what she wants to do here. And Suarez, both fighters, I will say, haven't fought anyone, haven't fought any good competition, or not good competition. They don't have any wins against good competition. So this is gonna be a tough fight here for me to make a decision on, because I'm not really sure where each fighter is at this point. But one thing I'm going to look at is the skills, how they fight. Demopoulos needs to get this to the mat. She may just need one takedown. Could be, it could make it a situation where she wins the fight with one takedown. But even if she doesn't get that takedown and win the fight, can she keep getting the takedown second, third round? When you look at Suarez, she just has to keep it on the feet. I've seen her defend a couple takedowns. I've seen her defend some takedowns, and Vanessa's not a high-level wrestler, so I'd have to think that Juárez can defend those takedowns that Vanessa's going to try to do against Juárez here. And when it comes to the stand-up, I got to give Juárez the advantage here. I think she has a 5-inch reach advantage. She's going to be the taller fighter in there. I haven't been impressed with Vanessa Demopoulos, I will say. But again, I'm not putting any bets on this fight, but for the sake of the channel, I've got to make a pick here. I think Juárez can keep it on the feet enough here and win a decision against Demopoulos. So yeah, it's a tough pick. I'm going to reluctantly pick Juárez to win this fight.
Topology does seem to slightly agree with you on that. Juárez is coming in at 59%. Well, we're going to move on to the fourth fight of this prelim card, at least based on the current fight order. We have Raoni Barcelos taking on Victor Henry. This is a fight that was supposed to happen a couple of months ago. Good to see it happening for this card on UFC 270. Raoni Barcelos, he lost the majority decision to Timur Valiev back in June. Questionable decision at that, if I remember that fight correctly. Very good fighter on paper, very good fighter in reality. He's a very credentialed fighter, good in the stand-up, good striking defense, good front kick, good up kick, good calf kicks. The hands are pretty fast. The boxing is pretty good in general, pretty sharp striker, heavy, accurate strikes from what I've seen. Good clinch I've seen with him as well. Good takedowns at almost 2 takedowns per fight. Good wrestling and an expert grappler as well. So nothing but good things to say about Raoni Barcelos. He's taking on Victor Henry, who's making his UFC debut. And he last fought at the end of October. His stand-up looks pretty clean in his own right. I've seen good regular usage of kicks from him, good feints, good timing on his counter punches. Looks like he has a pretty high striking IQ. Looks like he has a pretty diverse, range of attacks. And from what I've seen, his grappling looks strong in his own right. I've seen him land some takedowns as well. So you're looking at two fighters who on paper, match each other up pretty well. What's interesting about this fight is Raoni Barcelos is a heavy favorite, not surprisingly from not really knowing who Victor Henry is in the UFC, but still surprisingly from the perspective of how they sort of match up on paper. I think the key difference here is something that we talk about often in 2021, and we're still bringing this conversation to 2022. It's the UFC debut for Victor Henry. When fighters make their UFC debut, they don't always compete to their ability, and it's oftentimes their second fight in the UFC that is a lot better showing. If that's the case for Victor Henry, then he's in for a long night. If he's in tip-top shape, then this fight may be slightly closer than the odds may realize. But I do think ultimately Raoni Barcelos is the more dynamic of the two. I think, again, having the UFC experience will significantly work in his advantage. And, I just think he sort of has that X factor as well. So I'm going Raoni Barcelos. Minus 420 is pretty steep, but nonetheless, making the pick, Raoni Barcelos.
Yeah, this is a tough fight. They're giving this guy in his first fight in the UFC, fighting his first fight against Raoni Barcelos. Now, when you look at their skill set, when you look at that, a brief glance at the skill set, we know that Victor Henry succeeds in the grappling. He's going to want to utilize his grappling, get the back, get this to the mat. He's going to want to utilize the grappling that he has to win this fight here. But when you look at Raoni Barcelos, he's a man of no weakness. He's good everywhere. He has high level jiu-jitsu. He has really good striking. At the UFC level, it's pretty good. And in this fight, he's gonna have the much better striking than Henry. Man, this is a tough fight they're giving this guy, Victor Henry here, where they must be feeling really high on this guy. But I think Raoni Barcelo gets it done. I think it's a safe parlay piece to add to some parlays. I just think he might be better everywhere. When you look at the grappling, he's going to have the wrestling advantage, and he might have the jiu-jitsu advantage. There's a good chance he does have the jiu-jitsu advantage as well. He ultimately might be better everywhere, training in a better environment with better training partners. He's just getting better. He's more athletic, stronger guys, fought the better guys. I think this is a good parlay piece to look at. So I'm going to go Raoni Barcelos to get this done. Tapology is with me, so I know I'm on the right track here.
Let's take a look at the fifth fight. In that case, we have Jasmine Jasudavicius taking on Kay Hansen. Jasudavicius, she's a UFC newcomer. She competed on Dana White Contender Series, which you'll notice is a common theme for this UFC pay-per-view event. She looks comfortable on the feet from what I've seen. A little slow in my opinion, though, not the best footwork. She can definitely, sort of stalk her opponents down from what I've seen with her style. Looks like she has some wrestling, some takedowns, some ground and pound as well. Decent top control to go along with it. Kay Hansen, on the other hand, it's been over a year since her last fight. She lost to Corey McKenna. That was back in November 2020. Her striking is decent, albeit relatively basic. Her strength is ultimately in her ground game. Decent clinch, decent takedowns, definitely has some grappling too, and some at least submission attempts. Jasudavicius will have a size advantage in this one. She has a 5-inch height advantage. She also fought, or this fight, I should say, is at 125 pounds, whereas Kay Hansen is a 115-pound fighter. We've seen that situation where fighters who were 115 pounds and were a lot better than Kay Hansen had a hard time taking on 125ers. We've seen that a couple of times last year. And I think we're kind of in the same situation here. In some ways, I don't know how to feel. I'm not really overly impressed with Kay Hansen, despite her being a young prospect. But I think for the most part, this is probably a trap of a matchup for her, going against someone who's that much bigger physically, sumptuously physically stronger, and a fighter that has shown some of the same strengths as her. I think Kay Hansen kind of in a trap here. We've seen it happen to, I think it was Lupita Godinez. I could be wrong there. As a result, I'm going to go with the newcomer, Jasmine Jasudavicius. I will say not a confident pick. I would not bet money on this, but I do think this is a trap for Kay Hansen, strictly based on the size and the weight class. As a result of that, like I said, I'm going with the newcomer, Jasmine Jasudavicius.
Yeah, you gotta be careful when you look at this fight here. This is a tough one. Kay Hansen, she came in with that hype, with that judo hype. Ronda Rousey's her mentor, or someone she looked up to. So there's all that hype that Kay Hansen came in with, and she does have really good judo here. And in this fight, I think she's gonna have the grappling advantage. But Jasmine, I think, can negate some of that grappling. I think Jasmine, she was on the Canadian national team in wrestling, so she does have some wrestling in her. How good she was there, I can't really speak on. I wasn't really watching enough footage to make an opinion there. But with the striking, I think Jasmine, she tries to do a Muay Thai style. It's not really Muay Thai, but it's effective. She mixes in the kicks, the punches, and it could be enough here. Being the taller fighter, keeping Hansen at range here, beating her in striking, being more active in the striking. I think there's a spot here for her to win this fight. I'm not putting any bet on this because at the same time, Kay Hansen can easily go out there and utilize that grappling and just hold her down for 3 rounds. And Jasmine gets a quick loss, a wide decision. So again, I'm with Harris here, man. This is a fight that you don't want to bet here. But at these odds, I'm going to take a chance with Jasmine as well. I'm going to take a chance with Jasmine. These are wide odds, and I can't pick favorites all the time. So I'm going to go Jasmine here to get this one done.
Sixth fight of this UFC 270 event. In that case, we're going to be taking a look at Tony Gravely taking on Saimon Oliveira. Tony Gravely, fighter that we sort of know at this point. He lost his last fight in September. That was to Nate Maness, kickboxer, wrestler type of fighter. Decent all around, athletic, not really bad in any one area. Pretty light on the feet, very quick with his striking, very quick on the feet, good striking IQ. Throws good technical combinations. Very regular usage of leg kicks. Quick calf kick. Sharp hands if he sticks to his boxing, and from what I've seen, good wrestling. Has that takedown ability. Although I have seen him be out grappled, so that's something to potentially be concerned about. For Saimon Oliveira, the UFC newcomer, he's on a 5-fight win streak again. Another fighter coming from Dana White Contender Series. He competed last in September. Muay Thai background. He fights pretty tall. We see in this fight pretty much the same height, just a 1-inch height advantage. 3-inch or 2-inch reach disadvantage for Oliveira. Looks comfortable with his stand-up, like I said, a good amount of switch stance, good amount of kicks. I don't think he has the best striking defense, and that could really cost him in this fight. I have seen him land takedowns, so not a one-dimensional fighter from what I've seen. Looks like he has some knowledge in the clinch as well. But I'll keep it short. I like Gravely here, coming off of a loss, going up against a winnable opponent. I don't think Oliveira does any one thing better than Gravely. And I think ultimately Tony Gravely's speed will make the difference in this fight. I think his legitimately good wrestling can be a tool if things don't go the way that he wants it to on the feet. Not a lock by any means. I do wish the minus 250 was probably closer to minus 200, even a minus 180. But I'm not too mad at minus 250. I do like Tony Gravely in this spot.
Yeah, this was a hard fight for me. I was watching a lot of footage on these guys, and what makes it hard is Saimon Oliveira. He's wild. He's wild in the ring. Like he's wild in there, and he just throws strikes, and he's ready to brawl. He's ready for a war. If you can make this a striking fight, I can see him giving Gravely some issues here. One thing that Gravely has issues with is cardio, and if this gets to the second, third round, especially third round, I can see Saimon Oliveira getting to work. I can see him getting to work. So Gravely's going to have to utilize his grapple in the first 2 rounds to win this fight. Take out a lot of the cardio out of Oliveira. When you have him on his back, he's going to be trying to get up, hold him down, make him get gassed out here, win 2 rounds, survive the third. That's how Gravely's going to have to get this done, or he's going to have to somehow knock him out. And Gravely's stand-up has been improving. So I think there's levels to this. When you look at Saimon Oliveira, he's 18-3, but his record's a bit padded. Harris, go look at his record. He has some wins. I'll give him that. He has a 14-5 on the Contender Series, 12-2, 4-2, 7-2, 5-1, 7-7, 6-3. So he really has like 3-4 fights, really. But he's 18-3. So I'm gonna go with the UFC bet. I'm gonna go with Tony Gravely here. I think he can get 2 rounds out of this first 2 rounds using his takedowns. Avoid the submission. Oliveira has good submissions and has a really good front choke guillotine. He can definitely lock that up. But I think Gravely's gonna come in here knowing he's fighting a black belt, cover all angles here, and I think he's gonna avoid the submissions here and win the first 2 rounds. He might lose the third, but he might even get a third. He might win the third round as well or get a finish. So this might be a wash, but I'm gonna go Gravely to win the first 2 rounds here against Oliveira. He's still new. He's still fresh. His first fight in the UFC. I don't know where he's at, so I got to go with the proven guy, Tony Gravely.
Fight number 7 in that case, and we will wrap it up here and call it the last fight of the prelims. According to the current order, we have Matt Frevola taking on Genaro Valdéz. Matt Frevola, 2-fight losing streak. As we see here, he lost to Arman Tsarukyan. He lost to Terrence McKinney. Can't be too mad at either of those losses. That fight versus Terrence McKinney was back in June, so just over 6 months since his last fight. Solid or somewhat basic, I should say, solid but somewhat basic MMA stand-up. Some boxing, some kicks. He does throw at a good pace. He does stay busy. He does throw strikes and combinations. Pretty big right hand. Good pressure too. Definitely a fighter who's willing to engage. The movement's okay, but the feet are flat. Naturally slow as a result of that. I have seen that improve, but sort of old habits die hard. But ultimately with him, good wrestling is going to be his main strength. Good takedowns, specifically good slams, good top position, some ground and pound, some body locks. Really commands control when he's on top. But I have seen his opponents able to get themselves back up, so he doesn't necessarily smother them, and it's not necessarily a guaranteed round with him. But nonetheless, that is his strength. Genaro Valdéz, he's a UFC newcomer. Again, another fighter coming from Dana White Contender Series. Again, another Dana White Contender Series fighter that last competed in October. His striking looks pretty good combinations. Looks like he has a lot of pop, pretty explosive striker. Let me just double check here because I don't remember checking. 10-0 of his 10 wins, 7 of them are via knockout, KO, TKO. So definitely have to respect his power. Now, this is an interesting one here because, usually you want to go with the UFC talent, and I wouldn't be surprised if the smarter pick is the UFC talent in Matt Frevola. Minus 200, Vegas definitely sees him winning as well. But I actually like the newcomer here. I like Genaro Valdéz in this one. I think his explosiveness in terms of his striking style, I think that could potentially work to his advantage. Genaro Valdéz is not Terrence McKinney, but I think that explosiveness can sort of work to his advantage in the same way that it did for Terrence McKinney. Doesn't mean this fight ends in a couple of seconds, but I do think that, again, Frevola potentially leaves himself open to that type of striking style. I think Valdéz is better on the feet. He's shown me enough on the ground to think that he can sort of stop Frevola's takedowns, or as I mentioned, even if Frevola gets you down, you do have the ability to get back up, at least early in the fight. As the fight goes on, I mean, who knows? Maybe that's Matt Frevola's time to shine. But, Frevola lands 2.5 takedowns per fight. Like I said, you'd have to think at some point he does get that takedown. It's really going to be a question of what happens before the takedown happens. If the takedown happens in round 1, the fight's over. It's probably going in Frevola's way. If it doesn't happen until late round 2 or round 3, I can see Genaro Valdéz having the better performance on the feet. So bit of a dice roll in this one. Again, like you mentioned, can't go with just favorites, and I think this is a potential underdog, an undefeated fighter who's probably coming in with a bit of ego in a good way, where he wants to keep that undefeated record, and it is a winnable opponent for him in Matt Frevola. So I'm going with the newcomer, Genaro Valdéz, underdog. He's going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is a tough fight. This is a tough fight for me here. When I saw Valdéz, I looked at that power, and when you look at Frevola definitely has chin issues, and he's been knocked out, like flattened out, in the UFC. So there's always that concern that all it's going to take is one shot, and Frevola's going down. And when I mean down, out cold. So it's really hard to go with Matt Frevola in this spot because we know he has those chin issues lately. But when I look at his opponent here, Genaro Valdéz, he hasn't fought anyone. He hasn't really fought any good fighters. For me to say that, like, I'm not sure about this fighter yet. Like, I need to see more. He has a ground and pound in the 3rd round, a lot of 1st round finishes and 2nd round finishes. I'm not sure how he's gonna handle if he's on his back. And when I saw him on the Contender Series, it was a really high-paced fight. but he gassed out in the second round. He got the knockout. He threw a shot. He got the knockout. But he was clearly gassed. And Frevola is a cardio machine. So I'm going to go with Frevola here. I think I'm going to go one last time here. I rarely go with Matt Frevola. But I think when you look at the fights he's been paired with recently and the fights he's had, this is one of the easier fights for Matt Frevola. And I think he could get it done. I think if he sticks to his game plan, gets us to the mat, gets us to the second, third round, I think Frevola could be an issue for Valdéz at that point. So I'm going to go Frevola to win as the fight goes on, second, third round.
All right, sounds good. So let's take it to Vegas. Let's take a look at, again, the first 7 fights according to the Tapology order as it currently stands. Who would be your underdog pick?
Yo, underdog wise, man, I don't really have one that I feel good with. I don't have one that I feel confident. I think if I'm gonna go with one, I'm gonna go with Jasmine, Jasudavicius.
All right, sounds good. That was gonna be the same for me as well. So Jasmine Jasudavicius is going to be my underdog pick. Do you want me to write that on paper for you, or do you want to kind of call it no underdog?
Put it down. Yeah, put it down.
All right, sounds good. So in terms of sort of parlay picks, let's see who we can sort of offer up here. I like, looks like I'm not going to be able to put it on a parlay in terms of calculating it for you guys, but I like Ilia Topuria. I like Raoni Barcelos, and I like Tony Gravely. I mean, 2 bigger favorites, -700, -450, with a sizable favorite to go along with that, Tony Gravely. Probably about even money on that one. Again, some technical issues. We won't be able to count what that actual amount would be for you, but those 3 would probably be my favorite picks on the prelim.
All right, man. So everyone can win here. I'll give you Maddalena, Topuria, and Barcelos.
All right, so we have Della, Maddalena, -334. You said Barcelos as well?
Yeah, and Topuria.
-450, and Topuria at -700. So again, should be similar payout, but like you said, wanting to start the year with a win, huge payouts is definitely not something to chase for now. But let's leave it up. Let's leave it there for now. Like I said, this is a fight card order that is subject to change. So if you are taking a look at this video, wondering why the fight you're looking for is not in the correct spot, this being the prelim video, of course, up next is our main card prediction video. Then keep in mind that all of our fights are time stamped. If you don't see it on the prelim, check out our main card video. If you don't see it on the main card video, check out our prelim video. But we are going to wrap it up there for now. Please subscribe to the channel. Please press the thumbs up on this video, and please make sure that you participate in the comments. This has been the prelim prediction video for UFC 270, Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane. He goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. We are Boxing MMA Picks, and in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's do it.